According to ancient Native American stories, hundreds of years ago, long before the Spanish successes, the landmass was occupied by evil creatures that threatened to wipe out all Native American tribes. These creatures were truly unnerving, as they were more than 4 meters long and possessed crazy strength. The fear of the continents. To begin with, tenets developed for these monsters were brutal executioners. A tribe called the Paiutes named this inquisitive race of monsters Psittaca within the dialect of the locals. The word Psittaca implies tule eaters. They called them this since these mammoths used the tule plant to form different artifacts in their villages, such as pontoons and chasing gear. At that time, the innate tribes were in a steady struggle with other tribes, either over domain chasing or ladies. In any case, over time the Northern Pike locals started to have debates with another tribe, much more effective than them, the Psittaca. One day, the Psittaca appeared within the towns of the Northern Paiute, not to set up a relationship of comfort, but they arrived savagely to require everything in them. The towns indeed took some of the individuals of the tribe, taking them as nourishment that game-changing day. The pilots of the North felt undermined since they had misplaced much of their work and had misplaced vital members of their families. Full of fear, they started to spread the word about the difficult events they had experienced with the leader of the villages. Warned the other tribes that they were almost unused enemies. They presently had to confront the pioneers of the Paiute, who told the other tribes that they were monster men and women. They had ruddy hair, and the men had long, ruddy whiskers. Their skin was exceptionally pale, and their faces were startled by the stunning caution from the Northern Paiute. Numerous remained cautious of any danger, guarding their nourishment and planning their weapons. Days passed, Psittaca returned, devastated everything, and took Paiute warriors, who were never seen again. This was rehashed always, and the locals were tired and exceptionally irate about what was happening to their individuals. They had chosen not to escape, but to confront the risk that did not let them live in peace, thus starting a war between the tribes of the pilots of the North and the tribe of the Mammoth. Psittaca was checked in this way. The locals started to get ready to counterattack the foe monsters, and despite the fear, they chose to plan weapons to wrap up with the tribe. They took their time to analyze the developments of the red-haired monsters, to see where they remained, what they did, how they lived, and their shortcomings. Exceptionally cleverly, the Ways examined their adversaries for a while, to assault more unquestionably. As they watched Psittaca, more assaults were made on the Paiute villages. When their Paiutes had their throats opened and were eaten up by the mammoths as a delightful appetizer, this agonizing act had a significant effect on the Paiute, who was filled with seed, chosen to put into activity the arrangement they had been arranging for a long time to put a conclusion once and for all to these malicious cannibalistic creatures. They arranged bows, bolts, lances, and other artifacts to assist in defeating their foes. The primary assault happened, but unfortunately, it was added up to disappointment, even though they had a great attack plan amid combat. The quality of the giants was predominant. They were still distant from giving up. The pilots of the North took control, and started to call warriors from neighboring towns to help them in the war against the Psittaca tribe. Over a long time, the assault started to have more prominent constraints, and with incredible insights, the Paiutes were picking up control of the war zone. Much obliged to the adroitness and quality of the little innate Paiutes. They indeed oversaw vanquishing numerous red-haired mammoths, amid a few showdowns. This reality went on for a long time, which constrained the Psittaca to escape towards the Great Lake, where they chose to set up their modern town. With time, the mammoths had built large rafts with tule to escape to the lake amid the Paiute assaults, and within the same way they started to spread to other tribes in North America, where they captured their prey and ate up before their families. The war between the mammoths and the native tribes was extending to other parts, since the Paiutes had caused them to flee to diverse places due to the brutal assaults and deaths in the encounters. One day, tired of the rough assaults of the redheads, the Paiutes chose to rejoin all the tribes, and the assault was constrained to authoritatively wrap up all the monsters that were chasing them over the course of several days. They oversaw and set up an incredible procedure that would ensure their survival filled with fear. They all joined the battle that was to come, and outfitted with lights, lancer bows, and bolts, they anticipated the entry of the Psittaca mammoths. On the other hand, the red-haired monsters, as usual, went out to chase and assault the little privateers, anticipating minor assaults, which caused them no worry. In any case, that night would be exceptionally diverse. When they arrived at a northern village, all the individuals ran with war, cried toward the Psittaca, and were startled upon seeing all the weapons, and the anger that the Paiutes had. The Psittaca started to escape from the place. Numerous of the monsters fell in combat and were genuinely injured and decapitated in different ways. A few fortunate ones were overseen to escape the anger of the Paiute, who sought after them, trying to kill them. That night, the Paiutes had promised to return domestic, triumphant, since they would not permit this race of monsters to wrap up their tribes. The Psittaca, seeing that the Paiutes were seeking after them exceptionally closely, stowed away inside a huge cave, which they utilized as a haven, today called the Cave of Lava. The dark cave concealed the huge redheads, who, in fear of having seen numerous of their companions, dropped to the Paiutes' assaults. The locals held up at the cave entrance for these tremendous creatures to come out and slaughter them. In any case, they did not need to come out feeling restless. The Paiutes started to empower the Psittaca to come out and lock in and fight. They called them out to fight and thus put a conclusion to the war that for a long time tormented them. The Psittaca enduringly refused to abandon their asylum. The Paiutes were waiting for them to take off, but they never did, so the local tribe chose to assault them. More cleverly, they started to collect weeds, trunks, and other dry plants to piece the entrance. At last, they lit a huge blaze at the mouth of the cave. The fire was enormous, and the smoke made the view nearly inconspicuous. Small by small, they began to listen to the commotions and cries of lose hope inside the cave. The Paiutes knew that their arrangement had worked and they were prepared to assault. They began shooting bolts toward the mammoths, who scarcely came to the exit. The cries of despair were ongoing, and the mammoths started to take off, but the pilots assaulted them unfeelingly, murdering them immediately. Numerous others burned when attempting to elude the fire. On the other hand, others did not take off the cave and kicked the bucket, suffocated by the gigantic smoke caused by the fire, and so the Paiutes stamped their triumph. They had at last crushed the conspicuous killer tribe, exterminating it from the soil, guaranteeing they would never assault once more. This momentous accomplishment earned regard and honor for the Paiutes from the other tribes. All the Native American tribes that had been assaulted felt profoundly thankful for the triumph, since they would never once more endure the cruelty of red-haired monsters, so they started to call the Paiutes Sitika, which implies genuine warriors and conquerors. It is said that these Paiute warriors still keep sacred attires in which they tie a portion of the reddish hair of their foes as a sign of victory and control.